Okay, this is the first of our videos for our Chapter 2 work. Though you should have gone through the notes already, and you've probably already seen how these are worked by hand, and the key for the notes, it's located in Brightspace. So you know these can be very tedious problems to do if you're doing everything by hand. But we are going to be able to speed this process up by using Statcrunch here, and that's what's going to be demonstrated in the video. This is from the actual homework assignment. This is question number 6. The data represent the time in minutes spent reading a political blog in a day. Construct a frequency distribution using 5 classes. We need that piece of information. In the table, include the midpoints, relative frequencies, and cumulative frequencies. Which class has the greatest frequency and which has the least frequency? Well, obviously the difficult part of this, or the tedious part, would be to actually create this frequency distribution. There's a lot going on here. And fortunately in Statcrunch, if you'll notice this right here, this little button that I'm pointing to, you can click that and it will load things directly into Statcrunch. And that will make it much easier to do do the classes, do the frequencies, do the relative frequencies. You're still going to need a calculator to do the midpoints and the cumulative frequency, but it still will speed the whole process up. So when we load the data in, by the way, you notice the data is not in order. It's just raw data. So when we load the data in, you can see it's in here in Statcrunch behind everything. And I can sort the data right here because I want to be able to take my maximum data value and subtract the minimum data value. And you're probably looking at this saying, well, I can do that pretty easy with this particular set of data. Yes, you can. But what if it was 200 data points? So on the next screen down, you're going to see where we have sorted the data. And the way this is done, let me back up just a minute. This little button right here opens this drop-down menu, and I'm going to do Sort Table Ascending. And when I click that button, I get the data put nice and in order for me. So now I can quickly calculate my class width. So I need the range to determine our class width, which is the maximum data value minus the minimum data value, and that equals the range. Well, I see this 29 down here. I see a 0 right here. 29 minus 0 equals 29. The problem's already told us we're to use 5 classes. So with the range and the number of the classes, we can calculate the class width. So the range of 29 divided by 6 equals 5.8. Approximately 6. We're always going to round this up. Well, using our class width of 6, the class limits would be shown as below. And I want you to notice the second class limit of 6 right here, minus 0 equals 6. 12 minus 6 equals 6. 17 minus 11 equals 6. So that's how we can use the class width. So once we have a place to start, we can quickly set up our classes of 0 to 5, 6 to 11, 12 to 17, 18 to 23, and 24 to 29. And you'll see that difference is 6. The class width holds. So if we go back up, now your number is going to be slightly different, but you'll see that is exactly, and this is the problem worked out correctly. Mine, your numbers will be slightly different, but you notice that we have those classes. So with our class width, what do we need to do next? By the way, there is a shortcut to calculate this range because I could have gone to the summary statistics button, which I'm going to demonstrate later. It's under Stat, click column, and sure enough, there's that same range of 29 right here. We're going to see how to use this function later on in this chapter, but that is another shortcut that's available to you within Statcrunch. So we do see that 29 is the range right here. There's my maximum, there's my minimum. 29 minus 0 equals 29. Okay, now let's go back up and look at the problem for a minute. So we have this finished here right now. We could actually do this first midpoint. 5 plus 0 is 5, divided by 2 is 2.5, right? But I don't know what the frequency or the relative frequency. By the way, if you can't see this, that's a 0.3. And the cumulative frequency is 6 because there's going to be 6 in that first class. But why don't we let Statcrunch do this for us? So we know the frequency distribution is a way to organize and summarize data. And the way you one of the ways you represent a frequency distribution is with a histogram. And so if we go down a little farther, we can use that histogram to save us a little time as far as what the frequencies are going to be, or the relative frequencies. So you see this graph histogram function right here. So when I click that, I'll get this dialog box here. Well, I'm going to click on this variable 1 so that it'll come over here on the right. And I'm going to work through this at the end of the video so you can see me actually in Statcrunch doing this. I want a frequency distribution. I want the bins to start at 0. The bins are classes. It's the same thing. And the width, we know my class width was 6. And here's the interesting part, the value above the bar right here. So I'm going to get 6, 3, 4, 5, and 2 when I click compute, and I'm going to show you that on the next screen. By the way, these have to add up to 20 because that's how many values I started with. That was my n. Now, look what happens. And there's the histogram with the frequencies displayed. 6, 3, 4, 5, 2. And if we'll go back up, hope I'm not making y'all seasick, going back and forth, we're going to see 6, 3, 4, 5, 2. It's exactly what we have. Now let's look at these relative frequencies. 0.3, 0.15, 0.2, 0.25, 0.10. Now how do I calculate those? Well, 6 divided by 20 is 0.3. We just take this number divided by n all the way down. Or, if you'll notice, we're going to go all the way back down to the bottom of these notes. These notes will be available for you. I can change the image. Well, let me back up. I'm sorry. You see this right here, frequency? This is a drop-down box. If I hit this arrow, it'll also give me the choice of looking at the relative frequency. So if I come down here, I've clicked relative frequency and look, 0.3, 0.15, 0.2, 0.25, and 0.1. And I have all of that. So let's see what that looks like within Statcrunch. So I'm going to go ahead and pull the problem up, which I already have open. And this was the problem right here. Now I'm not going to calculate each midpoint in the video. It would make the video too long. You know how to do the midpoint. You know how to do the relative frequency if you've looked through the notes. Now, how do I do cumulative? Well, there's 6. That's 6. 6 plus 3 is 9. Imagine that I'm collecting them as I go and putting them in a basket. 9 plus 4 is 13. 13 plus 5 is 18. 18 plus 2 is 20. And I better have 20 here since this is the end I started with and I made a mistake. And we can see the class with the greatest frequency is 6. That's 0 to 5. And the least is this 2 down here, 24 to 29. Watching this from the beginning, I'm going to click here to copy my table. I'm going to open it in Statcrunch. There's my data. I'm going to sort the data ascending, even though I don't have to. And I get 0 to 29. Just for fun, I'll show you how I did that summary stats, summary stats column. Variable 1, they already have this default where it's going to tell me the mean and the sample size. I'm going to click compute. And look, did we say we had 20 data points? There's n equals 20. There's actually the mean of this frequency distribution, which is something that we'll get into later. I'm going to teach y'all how to do that. That's probably not the actual mean. Oh, yeah. That's the actual mean of the data, not the mean of the frequency distribution. Those two numbers are going to be slightly different. There's that range. And again, you'll be able to use this for a lot of the problems later in this section. I'm going to get rid of that, though, because what I want to show you instead is graph histogram. I'm going to put variable 1 over there. That's where my data is. I want a frequency distribution. I want to start at 0. I want a class width of 6. And I want to put the value over the bar because that's what I'm wanting Statcrunch to do to me. Do for me, excuse me, to me. That's good. All right, 63452. And now if I hit options and hit edit, I can change this to relative frequency and click compute. 0.3, 0.15, 0.2, 0.25, 0.1. And so when you go to take the test for this section and when you do the other homework, you'll be able to load the data directly in. There's one problem where you're actually going to have to type the data in, and we'll talk about that later on. I hope this video helps. I know they've been a little slow in coming. I'm going to try to get at least one more done tonight. To do with frequency distributions, and then we'll move into the summary or descriptive statistics. Have another video up for you soon.